have this extra bonding time with them, because what will I do with reactions like yes or no reactions or very premeditated NGO film answers, Not saying that NGO films are bad, but they're very like a different style. And I usually go for very narrative and emotional stories. So I have to put in that extra time and effort to bond with the people and maybe have a cup of tea, go on a hike with them, talk about myself, just like find things that are common or find things that are very different between us.
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nayar. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone. Today I am in conversation with Gunjan Menon. Gunjan is talking to me from Vancouver and I'm in Barcelona. She is a wildlife filmmaker, National Geographic storyteller, conservation communicator, and she's from India.
Thank you for having me, Payal. Really happy to be here.
Okay, so before we get into, the nitty-gritties of wildlife photography and filmmaking, just a little background on you would be interesting for my viewers, my listeners, and of course for me as well.
Sure. So I started with a background in filmmaking because like right after high school, I always knew I wanted to be a wildlife filmmaker, but there was no clear, straight road to this final destination of becoming a wildlife filmmaking back like a decade ago in India. So I went to a university to study film, and I just said that you teach me how to hold a camera, I'll find my way by myself to make wildlife films, and that's how it started. But back then, because there was no part to this journey, there wasn't enough work either. So I used to make wildlife films. I used to make wedding films, music videos, and work more in the corporate commercial sector. But then once I decided that okay, enough is enough, and I heard about this masters in wildlife filmmaking in Bristol. So I started applying to all these places and thought that no, I need to really find a way to do this. And that was just saying that like that's not the only way to do this, but it was one of the ways that I found was gonna like make my journey a little bit faster and open doors for me that weren't available back then. But then I was in Bristol for a year. It was a course with the BBC Natural History Unit and University of the West of England in Bristol. So there is when I got a chance to make my first professional short film. And it was a film about red pandas and their relationship with a woman in Nepal. So, and that is what like kickstarted my career, and there was no looking back after that.
Okay, so so did you think that, after you made this film as a part of your course, did you think that like this is your calling? And what has your association been in the past with wildlife in particular? I mean, how did that become like a part of your existence now?
So I don't know how this exactly happened because I grew up in Delhi and I didn't have as much access to like proper forests. Of course, there was urban wildlife around my house. So I used to bring home injured wildlife from all around, and then now I'm my mother. Like, I remember once I got home an injured bat, and my whole family freaked out that how can you get a bat home? And I was like trying to care for it. But that was just like the beginning for them to realize that I'm gonna be like a little bit crazy in life. But I think if I really have to think, it goes way back. And even as a kid, I was really obsessed with wildlife because of the books I used to read. And I think I was 3 or 4 years old when I had a book about these rainforests, and I would really read that book every day and look at these beautiful birds of paradise and these exotic animals that I'd never heard of. So I think very early on, I was sucked into this fascinating world of wildlife, and I just wanted to be around wildlife somewhere or the other. So I always found ways to do that. But mm, I I think my first trip to a forest was like quite later on, and when I first went, I knew that this is what I want to do for life. And of course, like with the Red Panda film having a life of its own and having so much impact on um, the species and the organizations associated with the film, I realized that, okay, this is why I do what I do, and this is what I want to do for life. So it just sort of
It
made
sort
me
of made,
realize
yeah,
my
that was
purpose. Yeah.
progression, I guess. Yeah, that led you to this stage in your life. Okay. Um, so how important do you think is human and wildlife coexistence, which clearly you saw from the film that, you directed in Nepal with this woman who had an association with these red pandas. So, in your opinion, how important is this human wildlife coexistence?
I think it's the only way our species will survive, because with growing population, wildlife and humans cannot live separately anymore, especially in a country like ours where these boundaries are blurring more and more. So if we kind of look back at the way of our ancestors and see how they used to coexist with animals, live in peaceful harmony with them, and they had a deep understanding of not a give and take relationship, but to just exist alongside wild animals. And we can find a way to develop peacefully, because if we try and encroach over the forest, then like with the existing climate crisis, that's no longer an option. We cannot cut down what we have. And the animals don't have enough space either, so they are dispersing into cities. So coexistence is actually how our ancestors lived. And I think if we embrace that, if we really look deep into what our values as Indians also is, um, it will show that it's not just important, it is the only way forward. But of course, I do realize that with coexistence also comes a certain degree of conflict. So I try and also tell stories of human wildlife conflict in a way that can address the problem or show stories of hope about people who are finding peaceful ways to coexist even with animals that they're in conflict with.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So you think that clearly, this is a very, very important conversation to have. And do you think that through your films, you're able to, you're able to um, lead these conversations further and also create an impact? Have you seen any kind of, you know, responses or any kind of impact in, say, for example, the film that, of course, that was your student film, but the film that you made with the association of the Nepalese woman with the red pandas. Did you see any impact outside of Nepal or outside of that community um, amongst people when they saw the film?
Yes. So when I make films, it's not just my passion. I use it as a tool to drive change and especially behavioral change. So it started the Red Panda film where people initially used to not believe that her profession was a valid one. Like they used to uh, basically the general patriarchy that exists even in Nepal, that women should work at home. So the first set of changes started happening from within the community, where they started realizing that um, she is doing really important work and she is protecting red pandas, and this is also very crucial for how we lead our lives, and she's bringing us recognition. So her mother, her family started being more accepting of what she does, like more than her family, her the society that she lived in was more accepting. When people started going there to specifically look for Menuka and say tell her that, oh, we saw a film about you, and that really started making these small little changes in her life. And I think there was this one instance where girl from Oregon, like miles away from there, was used to watch the film and consider Menuka Vatrai her hero. And she used to say, I want to grow up and become like her. I want to be a wildlife conservationist. And she was just 6. So her father also, who used to work for Red Panda Network as well, like sent a photo of hers to Menuka, uh, holding a photo of Menuka. So it was like a big cosmic photo of somebody from the Red Panda Network gifting Menuka a photo of this little girl holding a photo of Menuka. And it just kind of reinforced that her work in a remote village really far from where this girl lived is still making an impact on her life. So that was just like a beginning of the ripple effect that the film had. Like a lot of kids all around the world still raise funds for red pandas when they host screenings. So they and um I think after the film, Red Panda Network also employed a lot more women in their group. There were like statistically fewer poaching, but this is their work. I'm not saying this is because of the film, but like it's a ripple effect that just kept happening, and the cases of poaching reduced in the number in the areas where the red panda guardians worked. So, and outside of Nepal, I think in more privileged areas of India or even across the world, people would look at their own relationship with wildlife around them and think, if someone with so much hardship can do this, why can't we do this? And there have been instances when they've come and shared that this is the change that they're making in their lifestyle because they want to do something. So I think that was really nice. But in another example where I worked with leopards in India, there was a story I did with leopards and a community that is known to coexist with leopards called the Raikas. But
Which
they're
part of India?
Rajasthan and near Kumbhalgarh Wildlife Sanctuary. So we went to um, talk to a few, like this pastoral community of Raikas, and the story was supposed to be about their peaceful coexistence with leopards, because they revere them, they consider them a form of their goddess, like the vehicle, the avatar of their goddess. So, but when we went there, it was hanging in the balance. Like they would, it was more like a case of cultural tolerance rather than uh, plain black or white coexistence. It was um, the leopard used to prey on their source of livelihood, the sheep. And they would not, so there was a line they said that we can't do anything because there are like there are goddesses.
Yeah.
We revere them. We can't do anything, but like, and it was coming from a huge place of compromise. So imagine if there's like a generation that does not hold their cultural values as high as them, then the coexistence would not exist, and that would maybe like it's a very fine line. So stories like those are also important to show uh, people who are working in the field of conservation and science that maybe it's not as tolerant as we think it is, and people are, they would still be willing to kill or attack if this cultural tolerance, the feeling of cultural tolerance is like reduces in any one generation. So I think that was an eye-opener for me also, that we can't go into a place assuming that this is the story. You have to adapt and tell what is the authentic story of that place and that people, that community.
So typically, how long do you spend when you, okay, so here are two questions. One is, what makes you decide on a project? Do you feel, I mean, obviously there has to be a connection because you're so passionate about it. So the first part is what makes you decide on a project, and the second part is when you're in a project, typically, especially if you're in, with wild animals, and there is a story being weaved around, the human connect with the wild animals of the area. How long do you spend, and what is the method that you use in order for you to make sure that you get it absolutely authentic and spot on, and and also clearly the behavior of the animals, depending on, because you've talked about red pandas and then you've talked about leopards, so they're completely different species, and their behavior is something that you probably need to get an understanding of, right? So how long does the whole process take, and what is your methodology?
The time we spend in the forest actually just depends on the length of the film and the budget of the film. Like, how many days can you actually spend just sitting around waiting for I don't know, leopard to hunt a sheep? Do you have that luxury? Or can you tell, so if there are budget limitations, can you tell the story in a different way where you use more creative ways to um, tell the story by using whatever behavior you manage to capture. So time, it can be anything between 5 days to 2 months, depending on what the story is, how long the film is. So coming to your first question, we need to spend enough time. So I make sure that I have this extra bonding time with them, because what will I do with reactions like yes or no reactions, or very premeditated NGO film answers, Not saying that NGO films are bad, but they're very like a different style. And I usually go for very narrative and emotional stories. So I have to put in that extra time and effort to bond with the people and maybe have a cup of tea, go on a hike with them, talk about myself, just like find things that are common or find things that are very different between us. Because in some cases, like with Menuka, we used to bond over our mutual love for red pandas, but we also bonded over how she was super fit Pahadi girl and I was like horribly slow in the mountains. Like she would climb up these treacherous mountains in flip-flops, and with all my trekking gear I would really struggle. So we also bonded over that fact of how our differences and similarities still made us connect over our mutual love for red pandas. So I think you just need to find that common ground, and that's how like I, as a storyteller, am able to make them more comfortable for the camera too. That's also important. Like some people freeze in front of the camera, so we have to find ways that they can be the best authentic voice for their own story.
Okay, so tell me about beyond premieres, because I saw, while I was researching you, I saw that you recently, with your partner, founded Beyond Premieres. So what is that, and what is the objective?
So, because I was so inclined towards impact-driven films and wanted to create a tangible impact that was more than just screenings of films. I started working on impact campaigns for my own films, and then was like anyway helping a lot of friends ideate their impact campaigns. We decided that there was like a huge gap between filmmakers who want to do something to create change and like grassroots organizations who are actually working on the ground to do these things. So we thought that we could be the bridge between these two because of our experience and network, and actually help emerging filmmakers bridge that gap and find the right partners to do more with their films, and literally do like beyond premieres, take their film and make an impact campaign around it. That is more, and find the right people to do it, because you're not specialized in policy, you're not specialized as a lawyer, but a lot of the impact work does involve policy framework and legal uh, changes. So for that, who are the right people at the ground who have an expertise in this? So we just help people find those connections and build their impact campaigns around it.
You're like doing amazing work, and doing it with such such passion, such grit, such determination, and with a smile on your face. I think that that makes a lot of difference. So thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. Like, what you're doing is really important as well, because there's so much doom and gloom out there that you need amplification of people who are doing something. And like all these stories put together, even like what you're doing put together, is showing people that everyone's trying to do their bit. So we are probably not ready to lose hope yet. So I think it's really great. So thank you for doing this as well.
Absolutely. We can't lose hope, and change has to be there. It will take time, but I'm hopeful. So anyway, so good luck, and you take care.
In this series of conversations with nature and wildlife photographers and conservationists, Now Boarding hopes to be a part of an important ongoing dialogue on the challenges and threats being faced by wild animals and the long-term impact on our ecosystem and biodiversity. Join us by sharing your thoughts, and also your support with a one-time donation will help us to continue bringing you more and more such meaningful conversations. You can find all the information on how to contribute in the show description.